everyone, and welcome to another episode of Classic Gamer 74. I'm your host, Anthony, and this is my friend Larry. Hi, everyone. I'm Larry the Lion. And look who's making his very first appearance on film. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mumford. I'm on TV. No, you're on YouTube. I can see myself on TV. Yay! And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing Atari 2600 Prototypes Part 4. What happened to 1, 2, and 3? Well, we did those before you got here. Oh, what's a prototype? Oh boy, this is going to be a long video. One thing that all of the games in today's episode have in common is that they were all released in, or were to be released in 83 and 84, except one. Yeah, just one. Yep. And of course, that was the year of the great video game crash. Now, what's sad about some of these games is that many of them were pretty cool. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's too bad that some of those games didn't get released, and some of the crap that did get released, pretty much led to the crash. Yeah, he's got a point there, like Skeet Shoot. No, we shouldn't say any names. I mean, some people consider that to be a good game. Who? Well, certainly not me. Not me. Well, some people did. All right, whatever you say. Anyway, so without further ado, let's get started. Yay! Why do you say yay all the time? I don't know. Who are you again? And our first game for today is Confrontation from 1983 by Answer Software. This is still technically a prototype because it didn't get a full retail release. It was available for a short time directly from Answer Software. The best way to describe this game is that it's a strange version of chess, as you have pawns and a captain at your disposal. 2-player only, so you got to find somebody to play with you in order to play this game. Your object is to move your pawns and then your captain to the other side with only so much energy. You see your energy at the top and bottom, and every time you move, some of your energy gets deducted. However, you have an extra source of energy. You see that E thing kind of floating around there. That, if you can catch it, gives you some extra energy. Very unique for its time period for one reason. This game was pure strategy. And a large percentage of the games that came out at that time were either action or shooting. The next game we have to talk about is Boggle. It was from 1978 from Atari and was programmed by David Crane. Now, that name should ring a few bells. It doesn't for me, but anyway, this was actually I guess you could say, a port of the board game. Now, we talked about this briefly in a previous episode when we discussed board games as video games. At the time, the 2600 didn't have the capabilities to properly create this game, as games during that time period were only 2K. So you didn't have a built-in dictionary. You could actually make up your own words, and your opponent had to make sure that the words you were using weren't made up. And you could repeat words. There were a few other glitches, like you had to hit the reset button a few times to get all the letters, to show up at the top. But overall, the game was quite playable. Now, of course, it wasn't released, but most fans, and myself included, agree that if it had gotten released or tweaked in later years when the capabilities of the cartridges were improved, the game would be quite playable. So, again, this is Boggle, and I have a lot of fun playing it. Well, I bet you do, because sometimes I'm sure you make up your own words. Oh, yeah, and the people in the home don't even know it. Next up, we have Elevator Action from 1983 from Atari, programmed by Dan Hitchens. All right, now, Elevator Action was actually a port of an arcade game, and as far as I know, this was the only actual port of the game that was ever made. I'm right about that, aren't I? I'm pretty sure. I don't think it was ported anywhere else, but I'll double check just to be sure. Okay, now the story behind the game is that you are taking on the role of Agent 17, codename Otto, a secret agent for an unspecified organization.
Otto enters a 30-story building at roof level and must work his way down to the basement, collecting secret documents whose locations are marked by red doors. Along the way, he must use the building's elevator and escalator systems to move from floor to floor and avoid or kill the enemy agents trying to stop him. After picking up all the documents, Otto can escape to the basement and drive away to a waiting car to end the level. Now, as you can see, this prototype is not quite finished and it has quite a few glitches. For one thing, it doesn't have any sound or music. And it has a few other bugs like your character can actually fly. Look at that. How I'm flying there. That's just wrong. And it has wraparound bullets, like somebody can shoot from the other side, and sometimes that bullet will actually hit you from the other side of the room, which can be real frustrating. But if it had been finished, it shows the actual full capabilities of the 2600 from that time period. Now, some homebrew people have been talking about possibly releasing the game or making their own version of it, I should say. And to be honest with you, I would love that, because I'll tell you, when I was a kid, my piggy bank took a real pounding when they decided to put this game in the local arcade. So, any of you homebrew programmers that are watching this, hint, hint.
Next, we have Meltdown from 1983 by 20th Century Fox, programmed by David Ross. All right, now, Meltdown was to be the final game developed for the 2600 by 20th Century Fox. Of course, 20th Century Fox is still around today, and they use the name Fox Interactive. Now, this game was actually advertised in catalogs that it was released, even though it wasn't. So you could tell that they really had some definite plans to release the game. As you saw before we are showing this game footage, there actually was a prototype box created. Now, this game is kind of similar to Reactor in a lot of ways, even though it's a little bit different, of course. But the story behind the game is that you are a scientist working in a nuclear reactor, and you have a rogue quark that's moving about, agitating the atoms. And each time the quark touches one of the atoms, it will strip off some of the electrons, and the atom will shrink. Now, once an atom has lost all its electrons, it will become unstable, and if all the atoms destabilize, the reactor will blow. As the only remaining scientist, it's up to you to destroy the quarks and cool down the reactor. Again, this is coming from AtariProtos.com. To accomplish this, you have to make use of the only two tools at your disposal: an atom stabilizer and a cadmium rod. When the quark jumps to an atom, you must line up the stabilizer on the x-axis, line up the cadmium tube on the y-axis, and quickly insert a cadmium rod by pressing the fire button. However, as soon as you destroy one quark, another appears to take its place, so be vigilant and don't let your guard down for a moment. Well, with all the publicity, like the ads in the magazine, it became pretty obvious that the game was completed and ready to be released. And by playing the game, it's pretty much, you can say, yeah, the game was ready. This isn't an incomplete prototype by any stretch of the imagination. After the advertisements came out, much like the McDonald's game that I discussed in the very first episode, a lot of people wondered, well, what happened to this thing? They assumed that the game was just lost. Well, that was until 2004 when somebody found it at a resale shop. Now, I have to say that this has got to be one of my favorites on this list, and the best way I can describe this game is simplistic, but yet very addictive and fun. Next up, we have Telepathy from 1983 by Atari, programmed by Dan Oliver. Now, this is one of two prototypes that was made for the MindLink controller. What was the MindLink controller? Well, alright, now the MindLink controller was an idea that Atari came up with that really didn't quite work out. It was a headband that players wore on their head and plugged into the joystick port. The idea was that the MindLink sensors would pick up any facial movements or muscle twitches that the player would make. Atari actually said that the MindLink read the player's thoughts. Okay. The problem was the Mind Link didn't work very well in initial test runs, and even when it did work, players would complain of headaches and dizziness from twitching their faces all day. Okay, so after this, it was canceled. Here you can see an advertisement. I don't think this ever actually made it out for the Mind Link system. It was kind of like Atari's version of Rob, the robotic operating buddy that Nintendo tried. Alright, now according to the few things I've read about this game, you're supposed to be able to get through these different missions, and there are several of them in this game, by using the Mind Link. I believe you moved your head or something, or I really don't know, to get through these different levels, and I can't imagine moving my face and twitching and stuff just to get through these levels. It kind of gives you a headache just thinking about it. And just to let you guys know that this game is fully playable with the joystick. Actually, all things considered, it's a pretty fun and challenging game, even if you don't want to hook yourself up to some hardware. Another side note that's quite interesting was that Atari never released that flyer that you saw previously, and most people didn't even know this thing was going to be coming out, as Atari never really spoke about it much. But as I said, the game itself is quite fun to play with the joystick, even though it was never released.
Next up, we have Mind Maze from 1984 from Atari, programmed by Gary Shannon and designed by Howard Scott Warshaw.
Now, this game is supposed to show you that ESP exists, as you're trying to predict the correct picture that the computer's thinking of, kind of similar to that first scene in the original Ghostbusters. And of course, this was a Mind Link game. You have several different options to choose from, such as number of choices, 2 to 4 pictures, race or not race, fast or slow, pictures or colors, past and future. Now, the pictures themselves are very beautiful. As you can see, they're very detailed, which was quite a surprise for the 2600 programmer. So I have to give Gary Shannon kudos on the job he did. The game is quite fun, but of course, with anything related to ESP, you kind of just have to do it for fun and not take it seriously.
Yeah, I like this game. I'm psychic. You know that, right, don't you?
No, you kind of got it wrong. You're psycho.
Oh, yeah. Hey, wait a minute.
All right, next up we have Pleiades from 1983 by UA Limited. Now, this was the port of an arcade game. It was actually the sequel to Phoenix. As you can see, it's your typical space shooter game. This game pretty much went ignored, even in the arcade, as Phoenix, of course, is considered one of the greatest space shooters of that time, but a lot of people don't know that it had a sequel. Now, you have 3 distinct levels on this version of the game. The arcade had 4. Now, to be honest with you, I consider this game to be a lost classic, and definitely one that kind of goes above and beyond that of most space shooter games.
Next up, we have Power Lords from 1983 by Probe 2000, which was the company that made games for the Magnavox Odyssey 2. Now, this was based on a short-lived toy line and comic series, and I do mean very short-lived. You could obviously tell that this was inspired by He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, as pretty much it was a almost blatant ripoff. But quite a few of the cartoons and comic series from the 80s were trying to jump on the He-Man bandwagon. Now, in this game, you have 2 distinct levels. One, you were trying to shoot through that giant snake and make it into that giant asteroid, and then you're going down this corridor trying to shoot these evil robots. Now, this game was actually supposed to be released for the Magnavox Odyssey 2, which it was, and the Atari 2600 and ColecoVision, which it was not. Had the toy line and the comic series been a success, It probably would have been released, but to be honest, I really don't think you were missing that much. And our final game today, my personal favorite, so I'm saving the best for last, is Rush Hour from 1983 from Comavid, programmed by Dan Birch. Alright, in Rush Hour, this is a driving action game.
I think it's a fantasy because you really wish you could do these things when you're caught in traffic.
Yeah, that's true. And the main objective is to destroy 5 car carriers that are causing the traffic jam. You have laser beam headlights and red hot exhaust. The car can take a lot of damage and will repair itself over time. When you make it to the rigs that are holding the cars, you have to shoot them before it dumps the car on you. Now this game does have several bugs that are sound and graphic, and you only have one life. You can kind of see some of those graphical errors there, kind of floating, and sometimes the screen will get kind of funky, but overall it's a fun game, and I can only imagine what it would have been like if it had been completed. Although the game is quite playable, as long as you can overlook some of the glitches, you're going to have a lot of fun playing it.
Well, let's keep going and show them what happens when you beat the game. Or beat the level, whatever you want to say, since you only got one level.
Yeah, that's true. We're going to show you how you go about taking out those car carriers at the end of the level. And you can see how some of those glitches just kind of sometimes get worse. But like I said, the game is fully playable. It's just too bad it didn't have more levels and that the game itself wasn't completed. I'd like to see it actually get completed or see a homebrew version of it myself personally.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode of Classic Gamer 74. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to give us a great big thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget to click that little bell icon so you'll be notified when we upload new videos. How'd I do?
Very good.
Oh, thank you.
In the coming weeks, we're going to be uploading some really cool stuff that you'll only be able to see on Patreon. So please consider becoming a Patreon for this channel. For as little as $1 a month, you can help this channel to grow, and you will be rewarded with some really cool content, including a podcast.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. When's it coming?
Well, we'll let you guys know in the coming weeks. So again, please be generous and consider helping us out on Patreon. In our next episode, going along with the series on movie tie-in games, we are going to discuss probably the single most difficult game ever released for the Atari 2600, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And we are going to show you the easy way to beat the game, so you will not want to miss that. Well, until next week, this is Anthony Gamer.
I'm Larry the Lion.
And I'm Mumford.
And we will see you guys in the next episode.
Yeah, we gotta hurry up and get him back to the home. They're gonna be missing him.
Actually, I think he's going to be missing the retirement home.
Yeah, you said it. Tonight is,
Jello.
Oh yeah, tonight's Jello night, so let's hurry up and get back there.
All right, well, we will see you all in the next episode. Until then, have yourselves a great day. Goodbye.